My name is Carly Gilbert-Patrick, and I head up the UNEP Programme for Active Mobility, Digitalisation and Mode Integration. Before I go any further, I just want to check with the organisers. Are you hearing me okay? Okay, great. So a special welcome then to our speakers. We have Ms. Tadesse, Team Leader, NMT and Public Transport Division for Addis Ababa Transport Bureau. Engineer Khalil Shat from the Unit of Informal Areas Upgrading at the Cairo Governorate. We also have Fatima from the Senior Urban Transport Specialist at the World Bank and Acting Pillar Lead of the Africa Transport Policy Programme, and Sean Cook from the University of Cape Town. So a warm welcome and thank you for being here with us. We invite our speakers to stay on for the host session after your presentations, as we will be having a Q&A. And also a big welcome to all of our participants, both those dialed into this MS Teams session and also those joining us on the event platform PLAS. So why are we here for this workshop? We know that fundamentally African cities are walking and cycling cities. We have the biggest modal share in the world for walking and cycling, for active mobility. But that's not something to be proud of unless we're keeping those pedestrians and cyclists safe. So whilst, yes, we are fundamentally African cities for walking and cycling, we also know that for far too long, investment in the needs of pedestrians and cyclists is at best underfunded and at worst ignored. We're here because we must have a pathway to do things differently and to do things better. We want to hear today insights and best practice, but more importantly, have a plan on how we can convert these best practices and these insights into action. And we need to do this urgently for people and for the planet. So the flow of the session today, we will hear 3 case studies, perspectives from our speakers, followed by a Q&A. So as you do have questions, please put them in the chat, or if you're in the live streaming, there's also a place for you to comment, and those questions will be converted to the chat function. We'll then hear about plans for a Pan-Africa Action Plan for Active Mobility. So this is about converting insights and best practice and experience into action. And there'll be lots of interaction and idea generation required from our participants at that point. So speakers, can I ask you to try and stick to less than 10 minutes each at most, please, so we have time for a good question and answer session. And I think we can have the housekeeping slide up now, please. This session will be run primarily in English. French translation is available via the stream on the PLAS platform, but not in this MS Teams room. So if you are predominantly French speaking, please join the PLAS platform to get the French translation. So I think now we've covered all of the housekeeping and we can get started into the great agenda that we have. I would like to hand over to our first speaker for the day to talk about developing NMT strategies for African cities, the Addis Ababa case study. Ms. Bethlehem Tadesse, Team Leader at the Addis Ababa Transport Bureau. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Hello and good morning for all. Shall I continue, right?
Yes, please, if you could turn on your camera, that would be fantastic. And then, yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, and again, good morning, everyone who participated on this workshop. And also, it's my pleasure to attend this workshop also. To introduce just a little bit myself, I am Bethlehem Tadesse, and I am a transport engineer. And I'm currently also working in Addis Ababa City Administration Transport Office as a public and non-motorized transport team leader. Study team leader and senior expert. So the main point I am here today is to introduce about the experience of Addis Ababa, which is how so far Addis is going throughout this walking and cycling activities and related to the strategy which is developed for the city. So I wanted to tell you about this mainly. So to continue for the next slide. This is how the city is going on through this cycling and walking activities in each sustainable mobility days every Sunday. And so far, we are trying to do the activities related to this. And the next slide, please. So as an overview, which is how the mode share looks like in the city nowadays is, which is mostly 54% of users are walking. They're walking, and the 50% which are the public and motorized private motor vehicle users, and the remaining 31% are public transports, which means this shows most percent of the users are walkers and those mass transport users. So how the overview looks like, and nowadays we are more approaching on the walking. That's why we are trying to shift how to increase this modal share of those for the walkers and public users. That's why the strategy is mainly focused and developed by the city administrator. So the next slide, which shows how currently we developed this strategy by the help of ITDP, UN Habitat, and the UN Environment mainly. So this strategy is a 10-year goals. It has its own action plan, targets, and such goals in it. So we also faced by part, which is the first implementation, have its own 3 years plan. Then the second also has its own 3 years plan. So so far we tried to complete the first phase, which is from 2019 to 2021. Then we are also starting the second phase, which is starting from 2022 to 2024. So far we are trying to do these things with collaboration with different international organizations and the government bodies. So it has its own around 12 initiatives in it, the main strategy. As I said, it has its own targets, activities, and action plans. What things are done by different bodies and governmental organizations. By this way, this strategy is developed. The next, please. The next slide, please. So what we have doing so far, as I said, regarding this NMT strategy, it has its own basics for the NMT strategy. As I said, it has around 12 initiatives in it. And it has also supporting documents which are related to this strategy are developed, like the cycle network guideline, which is developed by the support of WRI also, and also different strategies which are supporting this document, how we are following, how we can accomplish these things by preparing such designs and guidelines which are side to side, how the strategy will be implemented. By this way, we are trying to do these things. Please, the next slide. So, as I said, these are the developed documents related to that strategy. The first one, which is the cycle network plan, which has also a 10-year plan in it. It shows how the cycle network, how the hierarchy of each cycle networking activities look like, and how other overall, which small cities and small outskirts areas are connected throughout this document is mainly in it, which is the first document, the cycle network plan. Then the other one also, which is the Addis Ababa bike sharing system. This is also the other document developed to have such bike sharing activities, system-based activities are doing in it. The first feasibility study process is done, and such related applications which are mainly used for this system are also developed. So we are doing this bike sharing system. We are currently starting as a pilot. We are trying to do on some corridors to have this sharing system. And the other also documents regarding how the users use such guidelines are also be developed by the city government and the bureau, and with the help of, as I said, those organizations. I don't need to forget the contributors and the support we have got from them. So by this way, we try to compile such documents which are mainly supporting the NMT strategy, how the public, the users are used because they have their own rights and they should get their priority. So the majority have to be used by this way. By this way, we have tried to do such things. So the next slide also shows how the other related documents are prepared as a car, which is the toolkit also the other guideline which is used to support the users, how such principles from the elementary to the basics, how such cycle corridors and lanes are also be tried to design. These things are included in this document. So the next slide shows how the related policies and strategies are also, in addition to the previous documents, the other transport policy of Addis Ababa, which supports this promoting the environment of this non-motorized transport. It has its own point in it. The other one, road safety strategy, also it has its own elements in it. Then the 10th master planning document of Addis Ababa also incorporates such things by focusing these public transport users and workers. And the other one also, the climate resilient green economy strategy, also the supporting main documents at city level, which is developed to initiate such walking and cycling things. So when I came to the key goals of this strategy, as I said, it is a 10-year goal. It has its own goals, contributing action and targets. So by this way, we try to focus on the activities and the proposed goals. So improving such road safety things, it has its own contributing action, as you say, and we have also target to minimize up to 8% of the fatality for 2018. This is one point. The other one, increasing the mode share of walking, cycling, and such public mass transport users. This has also, it's increasing the modal share by that percent, as you see mentioned on the point. And the reduction in the use of personal motor vehicles. As I said, the modal share of the private motor vehicles is high, but we have to reduce that part. So this is also the other targets and goal. Then the other one also improving the air quality related to this climate change and things. We are focusing on these things also. So these are the main key goals from the strategy which is taken. So the next slide that shows how the key goals are also be targeted as per the contributing actions and the overall points. So the next slide. As I said, it has around 12 initiatives, which is under the strategy document. So these are the main strategies we are trying to focus by having their own activities. So this is the pedestrian network activities, cycle network activities, the modal share, the cycle sharing, the transport access. These things are the main points which are focused under the initiative, which are listed in the document, including as I said, the targets, and it has its own goals and activities. I don't need to elaborate the things because of the time. So just I wanted to say, which is how the strategy compiles each activities by its own roles, design details, and each time by phasing such initiatives are undergoing throughout the 10 years goals. This is the main point of the document. So the next slide, which shows the roles, because a collaboration of such governmental bodies is the must to do this, the overall goals, these big goals. So how the agencies and their roles are also be mentioned on the strategy clearly. So these are the main agencies which are mainly done by the city administration. They are accountable for the city administration. By this way, they took their role. So this is how the agencies are shown. The AATB, which is the leader of this strategy and the evaluator. So the others which are listed under are also based on their role. They are working with us. So the CTI authority, ACRA, which is has the designing and implementing role. The beautification agency has also its own role regarding this strategy. The traffic management agency of Addis Ababa also, it regulates and oversees the general operation and the parking management conditions, and also the related agencies on the next slide listed are, they have their own, each roles are and activities are put on the document. So when you are sharing these documents with us from the beginning and from the starting, we prepared the committee from each team, from each organization. We prepared NMT team committee. Then by that way, the strategy is also developed. And throughout the implementation also, they took their role accordingly because they are from the initial, they are participated in it. So by this way, the things are and activities are going on. So on the next slide, we see
Bethalim, just to give you a last 2 minutes warning. Thank you.
Yeah, I am near to finish. Thank you. So this is how the overall structural conditions shows according to the accountability of each organization. So by the mayor office, each organizations are leading their own role. So the next slide also shows how the opportunities and those benefits we got so far. So such opportunities we have got is, the main point is a political provision and working with other international partners and availability of such financial budgetary, even it's not good enough sufficient, but availability is there also. The other one, the investment on public and mass transport is high nowadays, and such sustainable and commuting days, this car-free day and walking days in each Sunday every month is also the other point we got so far from these activities started. So forming this unit also the other one. Then some of the challenges we have got so far as a last is it's related to awareness. The awareness, it needs such awareness activities. And the society acceptance, it needs a little bit more work, it needs. So this the obeying rules also not that much. So these things, infrastructure cases, and the land use management as a whole, and this capacity of the country on such huge activities are some of the challenges we got so far. So by this way, we are doing the city trying to mobilize and develop by this way. And thank you for your attentive. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think, what's really interesting about the Addis example is we often, whenever we're having conferences and forums, we talk so much about, we have too many policies and plans, but not enough action. And I think Addis is a really good example of how actually, if you get the policy right and you have that hand in hand with the political commitment, they can actually be a really powerful change maker. And I think also just how important it is to have clear roles and responsibilities. One of the biggest challenges we see is governments who are not clear, city departments, national government departments, who are not clear who should be responsible for investing and maintaining infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists. And I think what I love the most, Bethalim, is that, you have non-motorized transport, in your title. And often, there's a lack of clear assignment of someone responsible in a team for active mobility. So I think that's also really good to see. Okay, let's hand over to our next speaker, and Engineer Khalil from the Cairo Governorate. Really looking forward to hearing about the Cairo bike case study. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I want to make sure that you are using the presentation that I've sent, a modified presentation probably half an hour ago, or this presentation from yesterday. I'm sorry about this inconvenience. Or if you can give me share a screen, I can share it from my screen. Just a little modification from the presentation I've sent a couple of days ago.
Sure, okay. Can the tech team confirm if you have the latest presentation that you can show for Engineer Khalil? And if you're not speaking, if you can put yourself on mute, please. I think just give us a second.
Sure.
Engineer Khalil,
Sorry,
I'm guessing they're just checking.
Hey,
That's
so
okay.
this is from the
Hi.
back. We don't have another presentation. Please just use the one that we are currently sharing. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I share my screen?
Is Engineer Khalil able to share his screen if you give him presenter capabilities?
Sure, you can also share your screen yourself.
Okay, we'll do that.
Mr. Khalil, are you going to share your presentation?
Yes, can you see it now on the screen?
Not at the moment. We saw your screen for a second, but then it disappeared.
Okay, what about now? Can you see it now?
Not yet. You might have to click the cross and unshare and then go back to share.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
And then it should give you an option to share windows. And when you click on windows, then we can see your screen, but not the presentation at the moment.
Can you see the presentation now?
Yes, we can see Cairo. Yes, now we can see it says Cairo Bike.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm sorry about the little inconvenience. I'm here today to talk to you regarding the Cairo Bike project. It's part of the urban mobility within Cairo as a city. This project, Cairo, is huge. I'm sure that most of you knows how big is Cairo and how crowded is Cairo. So this project is basically deal with downtown Cairo only. And this project is in cooperation with UN Habitat and Roses, and ITDP was giving some technical support at certain stages of the project. This is basically a typical street in Cairo. Can you all see my screen? Okay, so this is basically good. So this is typically how crowded the Cairo streets are. So we have a problem in the urban mobility. And so bike sharing, it's not a luxury, actually it's a necessity that the city shall incorporate in its urban mobility strategy. And we have different types of using bikes in Cairo. Very traditional people, I mean, we transport bread, very typical view or a scene you can see in Cairo early morning and middays and almost all day. And also in Cairo, we have some ladies using bikes as well. And yes, we don't have a bike system yet, but I mean, people using bikes and they have their own way of parking the bikes on the streets. So we have what we need to do is from transportation to accessibility. We need to look at this matrix, which basically we have congestion, lose time, pollution, and the social inclusion. So it's just basically so many problems created due to the congested Cairo street. And also it's costing Cairo, Egypt, 4% of its GDP, according to the World Bank study that done many years ago. And also $8 billion a year out of 229 billion of the total GDP in 2014 are wasted in Greater Cairo because of traffic, with expectation that this figure will even rise higher. So we have a problem that we have to face. But we have also an opportunity that require a paradigm shift. So The purpose of the bike sharing project in Cairo is we need to reduce barriers and explore opportunities by providing Cairo residents, especially youth, with an alternative mobility option with bike sharing. Also, a low-cost public transportation tool that addresses the mobility challenge of developing cities. Anyone can pick a bike in one place and return it to another place, making point-to-point human-powered transportation feasible. Today, almost 600 cities around the world, they have their own bike sharing system, and more programs are being starting every year. That's according to IDTP report. So bike sharing has made biking easily accessible, as it eliminates the struggle of finding a bike parking. And a bike sharing subscriber is able to pick up a bike at any point and return it to other point. So basically, a bike sharing system, it's not a standalone system. I have to mention that. It's an integrated transportation system. A successful bike sharing system, it has to deal and address the last 100 meters within your transportation system. You have a bus system, you have metro or underground system, you have the microbuses, you have private cars, you have your garage and parking, then you have the bike sharing system, which is a challenge to include all that within an integrated system. What we did is basically we have to do some surveys, and we talked to the people walking in the street regarding would they use the bike sharing system. You can see 90% said yes. Do you feel safe in cycling in Cairo? I mean, the safety margin is not, I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's acceptable. Then what we have done so far is basically we have done a feasibility study, we have signed a protocol, and we have existing funding for about 500 bikes and 45 stations from the partner, and also ITDP provided some good business modeling support to the system. And we will have a first stage, which now, as we speak, it's been, I mean, we are procuring the bikes actually from China. We have a local operator and an international operator. Local operator is a local Egyptian company, and the international operator is Donkey Republic. It's from Denmark, and they should be working very soon. Okay, let me go to the other slide. So that's basically phase one. We have almost 200 kilometers, 6.4 square kilometer, 500 bikes, 45 stations, and it has full integration with the bus and metro. That's basically showed the map of the linkage between the phase one and possible phase two and possible phase three, if we can launch phase one successfully, which we are hoping this will take place probably within a month or two. This is basically a typical Cairo street by the Nile. This is basically the what will take place. That's also a typical place within the downtown area. That basically the plan, which is being under progress right now. In order to do that, as mentioned from Addis presentation, an institutional setup should be arranged, and that basically what took place in Cairo. We have minutes of understanding that has been signed just to set the roles and responsibility, and also have an agreement of cooperation has been signed also as well between the partners to set the financial responsibility and also the rules and roles of each partner. It was tendered, and actually for us it was a challenge to prepare a tender for this project, because it's not pilot. It's a project that basically being tendered within the rules and regulation within Cairo Governorate, so it's embedded in the system. That's what we meant to do. It's not like a pilot and to see what will happen, because we have spent a lot of time and energy on studies, and also we have some private piloting that around Cairo. So this was tendered within the official institutional framework, and also we have workshop session that and site visit that took place, and also we have public survey, and in August last year we have a 6-year contract signed between the Cairo Governorate and the operator, and the project worked to provide bike sharing system for user to be a low-cost and environmentally friendly means of transportation for Cairo residents, which is expected to boost the use of public transport by providing crucial last mile connectivity. And this improvement in the public transport, this basically was a result of a traffic study that took place on the area that will have the project and the level of service for each road, and very extensive traffic study took place. I mean, the why and what? A shift to sustainable and environmental friendly mobility. How? I mean, 500 bikes, 250 in the first phase, the second phase maybe a couple of weeks after. Expected to boost the use of public transport by providing creation last minute. How? We'll have 45 stations within the downtown area. It's low-cost mobility option to the residents of Cairo, and also will be using also solar power system, and will have a save of urban public space and traffic mitigation of pedestrian. And I have to mention the bike sharing. It's not a bike sharing standalone project. It also integrates with the transportation system, and also it should integrate with some public spacing, similar to what took place in Bogota and some of the other countries. These are the distribution of the bike sharing. We have one central station that takes 40 bikes. Then we have 39 small size and 5 medium size stations, and that basically they will articulated and placed in the map within the area. We'll have the first phase. Basically, I will just go in details now. You can see the stations. This basically in the workshop, we're looking at how the station looks like, the solar system, the lighting system, the advertisement, and we had a challenge in the business model. So we gave the operator a chance to use the bike and the advertisement panel, not only to brand the system as Cairo Bike, but also to generate revenues from the advertisement of the bike and the station. That basically we're expecting 5,000 daily rides. This is how the bike looks like. We spend a lot of effort with UN Habitat and some other people to make sure that the bike is okay and it will take the heavy use of it. And the scope of work, I will not repeat myself, but that basically some of the steps that we took. That's the customer service and the main station that will be manned. This is the only station people will be sitting on it, because also we will have a bike sharing system, a mobile app, but some people doesn't read and write, so they can go and get a prepaid card from that station that they can use. They can get it, for weekly, monthly, whatever. It depends on their ability to do that. So they can apply for membership or recharge accounts. The redistribution of bike, in order to be able to figure out the system, the operator will have like a trial period, and this will take probably about 4 weeks to understand the logic of the redistribution of bikes. And that's basically the operator will do it with our support as well. This basically some of the fares that between UN Habitat, Cairo Governorate, and ITDP, we came up with some of the figures, like the annually 600 per year. That's, almost, it's less than $40 a year, which is, as I told you, that it should be an economically available urban mobility system, and the collection will be provided by a software or via the prepaid cards. And that's basically the mobile application. Donkey Republic supported the local operator heavily in that particular application, and it's in English, but we have it now in Arabic. Actually, now it's in the final stages of the review and the audit of the Arabic version. And we have to come up with the branding, and it's called Cairo Bike, and you can look at this particular slide, and you can see like we have each station, and you can see all these, signature and coordination. We had so many people on board to agree on the location of the stations and to get the first stage going. And here I have to mention that these are not set in stone. Any of these stations, when we have the operation in place, if a station proves not to be effective in the mobility of the system, we can shift. But this basically the initial 45 station, and upon the initiation of the project, station could be maneuvered around. Hopefully, will not be a big percentage, probably 5 to 10% or so. And we have chosen this particular branding, which is important, and I'm coming to the last couple of slides. And
okay, 2 minutes left, Khalil. Thank you.
I'm almost done, and actually I'm done by now. So that's basically. But I have to mention that we are now spending a lot of effort with the bike sharing community for awareness raising, as Ad's presentation mentioned, to change behavior, and this will take time. And as I mentioned, this is a paradigm shift in the attitude and the daily routine of people living not only in Cairo, in most African cities. So the awareness and the civil society and the bike sharing community will play a major role in helping the successful launch of such a system. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Engineer Khalil. So the big question, when are you launching?
As I told you, the contract was signed August last year. The bikes is being procured from China. They already made it to the Egyptian port. We are hoping, we have COP27 in Cairo sometime in November. We will not wait till November. I can promise you that. So we are looking at July or August, and hopefully I will mention on this platform when the launch will take place. But it's July or August, hopefully.
Okay, fantastic. So when we're all over for COP, we'll be able to cycle around using the bike share, which is great news. And I think it's so important what you said, that it has to be part of an integrated transport solution. This isn't about just plonking a bike share in a city. And I think the other thing you mentioned is how much the city is in control of the design, the planning, the process. Of course, it needs to be a partnership with private sector, but what's so important is that it's the city leading, because it's the city that knows what the citizens need from its transport system. Thank you so much. Let's just a reminder to our participants, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And if you're on the streaming platform, you can also put your questions in the comments and they'll be transferred over to the chat. I'd now like to hand over to our next speaker, and then we're going to have a break for a Q&A. Fatima, the Senior Urban Transport Specialist at the World Bank and Acting Pillar Lead of the Africa Transport Policy Programme. Over to you to talk about the money. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation to this forum today. I'm going to talk about money, but I'm going to, when I was preparing this presentation for today, I was thinking mainly on incentives. What are incentives to put money on something? So I think I prepared a very brief presentation with 3 slides, and I think it will take me around 10 minutes. And I think your colleagues will be sharing the presentation. Otherwise, I can share here on my side.
I think they have it and should be putting the slides up any moment now. Someone from the tech team could confirm you have the slides for Fatima.
Hi, Fatima. Yeah, we have your slides. We're currently pulling them up, so just a few seconds.
Okay, excellent. So maybe while the presentations come up, as I was saying, basically I have prepared a presentation about prioritizing financing for non-motorized transport infrastructure with a focus in Africa, because Africa is actually the region where I have been focusing my work in the last 5 years, working in different countries in West, East, Southern Africa, and I think in the context of Africa, something that we are all very much aware it is that most of the trips in African context are actually walking and are actually non-motorized trips. Maybe the share of biking it's limited except in some specific locations, but walking is the dominant mode of transport. But even today, we know very little about it. For example, even the cities that have relatively good data on transport, that have developed, for example, many of the African capitals have developed transport master plans. And in these master plans, if you look at them often, when you look at the modal share, they talk about modal share, but actually they are talking about motorized modal share. And that actually gives you an idea that even in the storyline, the walking and biking also, but especially walking, as this is more relevant in this context, is forgotten in the storyline of the mobility of these cities. And as also another dimension, it is we have also quite limited information more on the qualitative side of this of walking, no? And what are the key challenges for the people who walk in African cities. And here, something that in most recent years, I think there has been some additional efforts on the academic community and local universities to build up this knowledge. And what we have seen, it is the tremendous issues that that people face, both from a road safety perspective as well as security perspective for the people who walk. So they are disproportionately affected in their mobility. So maybe you can pass to next slide. And yeah, next one. Okay, so yeah, so I was talking on. Yeah, so basically, so what we see is, although most of the people work in Africa, there have been limited investment in non-motorized transport infrastructure, and here, when we think about what could be the reasons for that, I mean, one of the key reasons it is that we are seeing that most of the African cities are being developed in a car-centric with a car-centric focus. Cars still are a sign of development, a sign of status in most of the cities, and a lot of the focus of the development of cities is actually put on improvement of the mobility needs of the car users. The non-motorized transport infrastructure in general, they are less politically visible. So this is another reason why there are often resources that are less allocated to this non-motorized transport infrastructure compared to other larger infrastructure like big highways in cities or big public transport projects. There is also issue related to the technical bias of the professionals working in the countries, in a way following the training that they have been following at the at the universities, or following the common practices followed in the last decades in the country. I mean, that also create a bias towards more motorized infrastructure. And also another dimension, it is that when we evaluate investments, the methods to evaluate the economic benefits of road investments or public transport investments are in general very well defined in terms of gains in travel time and quantifying gains in travel time, gains in vehicle operating cost. However, for non-motorized transport, the methods are less straightforward, more difficult to calculate. So often, we are not able to capture some of the key benefits of non-motorized transport infrastructure, such as health benefits, for example, for different users, or improvements on safety or security. So next slide. So based on this, what should be the key key steps actually to prioritize investments in non-motorized transport. Here, I think also based on what we have discussed before about the key constraints. I think first of all, it is very important to create awareness about the issue of non-motorized transport, both from building up knowledge on the constraints and the needs of people who walks and use other non-motorized transport modes in cities, as well as create awareness through civil society groups in different countries, to show the importance of non-motorized transport and to show that the needs of these groups are not being fulfilled. Another dimension that we have been trying to implement in some cities and supporting some cities in the continent has been also to support non-motorized transport projects that are politically visible. And this is, for example, had worked well on terms of pedestrianization of some specific historic streets in some of the cities, building up a non-motorized transport plan in the neighborhood upgrades to really build a package of investments that are more attractive at the end. Overall, I think here in this agenda, in the context of Africa, the role of the development partners has been timid up to now in this agenda, but I think there is also an important role that they can play both in directed financing towards the most non-motorized transport infrastructure, as well as influencing the dialogue with government on this in this direction. The last but not least I wanted to mention it is that in terms of prioritizing non-motorized investments, I think we should also open the focus on not only thinking about the infrastructure itself, but it's also very important that as cities are building up the stronger non-motorized networks, that there is also an important investment made in improving parking management, enforcement, discipline in the land use. So it's actually a quite comprehensive package that is needed really to show that results in this area of improving at the end the lives of those that work in cities that actually are the majority of people in African cities. So that will be all on my side. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Fatima. I think you raised some really critical points. And I think, you mentioned it's so difficult to assess the benefits of active mobility. And I think part of the problem is there's been a historic way of assessing viability of investments, which has been very focused on motorized transport. And I think as a community, there's a lot of work that we can do to come together and sort of come up with a new model of assessment. Thank you so much. I think let's move into Q&A. I can see already there's lots going on in the chat. And there's a question already for Addis and for Cairo from Verena from GIZ asking, how do you address the issue of road safety for cyclists? And I'm going to add to that question and say, how do you address the issue of road safety for pedestrians and cyclists? What's the mix of actions that you are foreseeing around enforcement, sensitization, infrastructure? And Khalil has already sort of come in on the chat from a Cairo perspective, talking about how it's a major discussion point. And Verena's asking
something, Khalil, to that.
Yeah, so if you want to come in and answer, and then we'll hand over to Addis as well. Thanks.
And actually, I have to start by saying that I'm very pleased to see you also since last time we met in Nairobi. It was an interesting and inspiring visit. So, and I see some also familiar faces as well. But anyway, regarding the safety, what we're doing right now is we have a phase one, which is we will have a segregated bike lanes within the streets. But we have a higher discussion with the Ministry of Housing and the some other agencies regarding the what should be the solution, sustainable one. Because also segregated bike lanes within the street, I mean, yes, it's okay, but on the long run, I mean, it's not the best option. So now for Cairo downtown streets, we have a serious discussion headed by the Prime Minister and Minister of Housing and Cairo Governor and the different and relevant authorities regarding the option of having the sidewalks. Now it's 3 meters. There's a discussion to make it 5 meters. So this will not only improve the safety and the pedestrian usage within downtown Cairo, but also this will give a safety to the bike sharing system. The discussion now is ongoing, but we agreed we will not hold the launching of the system till we have this final discussion concluded. We'll launch the system with a segregated bike sharing within the existing roads, and hopefully we will go up on the pedestrian on the curb, to be 5 meters very soon, probably sometime next year. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to just ask you to keep talking because there's a question from the live stream for you asking about the bike share scheme. Do you have a sample business plan? How does the bike sharing scheme recover funds? If you could give a few thoughts on that, thanks.
Yeah, actually this was a big challenge. Because if it's a pilot, if the private sector is doing it from the corporate social responsibility, and it sounds cool, it looks good. Cairo is great, but this was not the target of the partners. The Cairo Governorate, as the lead steering partner in that particular project, wanted to make sure that this is phase one. We need to cover all over Cairo. So in order to do that, we should look at the business model. The business model means the cost of the system, the cost of the bikes, how much will it cost, how much will it cost to operate, and what are the revenues, and how this relates to each other. So that's why, if you recall, within my presentation, I mentioned that we have to add in the advertisement rights given to the operator based on a flat fee known to the operator for the 6 years in order to get enough money to cover the system. Plus, we are giving the operator a monthly payment for operation cost. So the business model is a challenge, and ITDP helped us, along with UN Habitat and the relevant authority within Cairo Governorate, to have a business model. I can share with you, within my presentation, I gave you the fee structure per se. We can make the fees higher, but people will not be using the system. So we use a fair structure, a fee structure that encourage people to use the system, but also on the other side, we try to generate enough income to get some revenue for the operator. And also you have to keep in mind, and that's actually a big challenge now for TfL, for Transport for London. I was in London a couple of weeks ago, and at London School of Economics, and a big discussion regarding the deficit. Transport is a public utility. Transport is a service the government provides to the citizen. So business model doesn't mean that they have to be equilibrium. It doesn't mean that I spend $1 and I get $1 in turn, otherwise the service will not be available for people. No, I provide good and decent service for maybe $1, and I have to run it economically. And if I can get 0.8 or 0.9, this is great, but the rest should be sponsored and supported by the local government in a good way and in a sustainable way as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, we, for years and years, we are car drivers, including me, including you. We drive around in our car just on our own. And mostly speaking, we don't pay for that privilege, right? And yes, we're all paying taxes, but that tax should be for transport as a whole, not just so I can drive my car. So I think it's really just rethinking the fact that transport should be for the public good and not for the individual motorized vehicle user. Right, I know we do need to get on to the next session. We've got one question that I'd actually like to ask Bethlehem from Addis to answer. It's from the live stream from Ted Johnson. What is being done or can be done to address the car-centric social aspirations in African cities, especially among city planners who've been trained to cater to this? Linking on from what I just said, we're very car-centric. Cars get to do whatever they want, take up all this space. Most people in transport are driving cars and not using public transport and walking and cycling. So how do we change this sort of everything is about the car, the success is the car? So Bethlehem, any thoughts on that? And then we'll move into the next session, the next bit of this session. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So as you said, the main point is focusing on those road users, which are both pedestrians and those mass transports. So how can we minimize those private motor vehicle users? we are mainly focusing on the prioritizing those walking and cyclists. For this case, we try to have on such new designs and even on the existing road designs, we try to incorporate such footpaths and also cycle lanes throughout their design. So for those existing corridors, we try to incorporate at least a minimum length of such walking and cycling. And for those new design roads, we tried to incorporate such footpaths and same things under the design. So ACRA, which is the Addis Ababa City Road Authority, role is to incorporate such things throughout the design, and the other organizations evaluate from the different perspective, from the safety and other main perspectives. By this way, we try to incorporate this walking and cycling lanes by separating from the existing corridors. So by this way, we try to do these activities.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. We may have a few minutes towards the end for some more questions, but let's move on to the next session. So, I mentioned I head up the UNEP program for walking and cycling and digitalization and mode integration. And there are a number of organizations that I could not do my job without. ITDP has been mentioned a lot. They're one of them. Walk 21 Foundation is another one. I think Bron's listening in, and University of Cape Town, and Sean Cook is definitely another one that a lot of the work we do, Sean's the brains behind it. So I will now hand over to Sean to fill us in on this idea for a Pan-African action plan for active mobility, which has an amazing acronym of PAPAM. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you so much, Carly. And good morning to everyone. Thank you for having me at TCCW this year. As Carly said, I'm an urban transport researcher at the University of Cape Town. And today I'm mostly here just to start a discussion around PAPAM, around the idea of a Pan-African action plan for active mobility. And this is an endeavor that UN-Environment is embarking upon, and we're a partner, and we'd really like your insight here. It is very much the early stages. We're just starting out, and we would like your input at this early stage. Next slide, please. So as Carly and many others have mentioned, Africa is a walking continent. Overwhelmingly, walking dominates our transport profiles, and on average, African people walk for about 55 minutes per day. And it is the most widely used transport mode, as Fatima mentioned, even for commuting purposes. And so you would think that it would attract a sufficient level of investment, but it does not. It is systematically underinvested in, and many of the reasons have already been touched upon. It comes down to education of the urban planners and engineers, and the way in which a range of things are valued in the practices that we use. But the result of which is that 230 pedestrians and 17 cyclists die on African roads every day that we know of. The real number is likely much higher than that, sadly. And it means that 95% of our roads are not adequate to serve pedestrians or cyclists in a meaningful or valuable way. And this can be rectified rather quickly and rather cheaply if the right commitments to investments are made. And so both from government stakeholders, but also from the development finance institutions. And so the obvious question is then, if it's relatively cheap and it's relatively quick, why haven't we done it already? And personally, I think it's just down to the fact that there are many needs on our continent. There's a lot of priorities. And so there's always conflict. There's always a level of prioritization that needs to be had. And so far, walking and cycling has lost out. And so part of what we're planning to do with PAPAM is to try and move walking and cycling investment up the agenda so that it attracts more of that investment. And so the goals of PAPAM, you can go forward 2 slides, please. The goals really are around raising the profile of active mobility through highlighting its potential role to address the deteriorating air quality situation in our cities, the climate crisis, the recovery from COVID-19, and a range of other things in which walking and cycling can be valuable. We also want to try to define the common priorities that are related to walking and cycling so that we can create kind of like a shared checklist among our government stakeholders around actions that they can put forward at both the national and the city levels. We also want to catalyze walking and cycling investments across different governments through bilateral and multilateral agreements, through the development banks, and through mobilizing climate finance for walking and cycling improvements. We want to spur a lot of dialogue between the different countries and across different African regions, and identify key performance indicators that we can use to track progress, which have been lacking so far around walking and cycling projects especially, and the investment therein. And so the form that the PAPAM is going to be taking, it's going to be leveraging off of something called ANWAC, which is the African Network for Walking and Cycling, which is also a new initiative across the continent, which is a collection of very diverse stakeholders, and at both the national and city levels, and specifically government stakeholders at the national and city level. We are hoping to create about 10 to 15 Sorry, I think I lost my connection there for a second. So yeah, 10 to 15 commitments that the governments will be able to sign up to, that they can achieve over the next 5. Sorry, it seems like my internet is cutting in and out. Carly, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you at the moment. You cut out for a bit, but you seem to be back. Okay.
Sorry, South African internet services. But yes, so you can go ahead to the next slide and the one after that. So there's 3 core elements to PAPAM. It is Pan-African, it's an action plan, and it's for active mobility. So Pan-African is the fact that it will be across the entire continent. It will have a Pan-African part of it, but it will also have 4 individual regional action plans for North Africa, East Africa, West/Central Africa, and then Southern Africa. And each of these regional action plans will be implemented and designed by a different partner. ITDP, who has already been mentioned, Otjuena Mobility, and the SADC Alliance for Road Safety. And then there are the regional partners, ourselves, UN Habitat, and Bikes. All of this then organized and coordinated by Carly, UN Environment, and the Share the Road program. Next slide, please. And so the action plan is going to be building on a lot of work that's already been done. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we'll be looking at similar work that was done around clean fuels and vehicles on the African continent, as well as the Pan-European Master Plan for Cycling Promotion, which had a very valuable consensus building process that they conducted and then launched in 2021. Next slide. And equally, we're going to be resting on a lot of existing work that's being done on active mobility on the continent through Walk21, the UN Road Safety Fund, TUMI, the National Street Design Guidelines, ITDP, and others, and to tie into non-transport processes that are underway that have a lot of momentum already, like Agenda 2063 from the AU, the SDGs, and the NDCs around climate change and the IPCC work at the moment. So really, we're not trying to reinvent that much here. We're trying to consolidate and consensus build around specific commitments for walking and cycling. Next slide, please. And there are 4 main activities that are going to be part of this process. A very short timeline that we're engaging in here. The first will be the Africa Forum for Action, which will be in Kigali in June of 2022. We will start this process and start the efforts to build commitment around this process to build these action plans at the regional level. We'll then move into regional consultations in June and August, consensus building around the chosen commitments through September and October, and we're hoping to be able to launch an agreed upon action plan at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in November. But whether we get there is largely up to the buy-in that we have from our government stakeholders, and also all of you as well, our diverse list of stakeholders. So the Regional Forum for Action in Kigali, as I said, will be introducing the concept of PAPAM. We will start to set the objectives we want for the process, what outcomes, build a collective vision for both the process and for walking and cycling on the continent, and start to really drive the commitment to the overall process among the stakeholders who are in attendance, as well as those who are attendees will then become champions too when they go back to their respective cities. Next slide, please. The regional consultations will really just distill the regional visions and those objectives into a long list of viable commitments or options that can be achieved over the next 5 years. And then the third is the consensus building on the next slide, where we will then start to just refine that long list into a short list by building consensus among our focal points in each of the countries, as well as building a platform for those stakeholders to be able to engage with each other over this 5-year period to make sure that there's still that kind of regional collegiality and friendly competition among our participants that will really drive this process forward. And we will then be in the background to assist the focal points in trying to lobby buy-in for these commitments as high up within the respective governments as we can get it. And next slide, please. So over the next few years after PAPAM, we will be looking to support the government stakeholders, DFIs and others who buy into this process in trying to achieve those commitments, the commitments that are being set out in these regional action plans. And also we'll be exploring the idea of upgrading this into some sort of full Pan-African master plan for active mobility, more similar to what is already underway in Europe, with the idea that this would become more than just a set of commitments, but also now a robust process of kind of discussion and planning for the prioritization of active mobility before 2030. So the last slide, I think, really gets to the topic of today, which is the question to all of you. What would you like to see in PAPAM? What would you like to see in a process like this? Both in terms of themes, as well as, say, values, virtues. What kind of topics would you want to see in a process like this? And I think there are a few different ways we can try to get some of this engagement into this process at this stage. There is a link to a retro board, which I believe will be pasted in the chat now, where you'll be able to answer 2 or 3 of these questions by putting in your suggestions, your insights, and we'll be able to pick up on those. You can vote on other people's if you believe that they're important, but you can also add questions into the chat at this stage. And for those in the Teams room with us, I don't see why you couldn't put up your hand and if you have a question or a comment or an insight, and share that verbally. I always prefer to have a conversation than for me to occupy too much of the time and the room. So I think we're starting to
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Carly.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, you've got the link there. Please jump in, and there's a few questions. Answer 1, 2, or 3 of them. This is actually the first time that we're consulting on this process. We've had the core team that Sean brought up, but this is the first time we're opening it up. We have a big 3-day event in Kigali coming up in June with about 100 participants, including government, national and city governments from all over Africa and NGOs, and we'll be talking about this in a lot more detail, but your comments today will help inform those discussions. And I have my email address in the chat, so if you're interested in getting involved in the process after today, you can also email me and we can bring you in the loop as one of our core stakeholders. And if any, so that will keep happening in the background, please go in. I can see we've got gender, children inclusion, things that we want to include in the action plan. And if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat or put your hand up, like Sean said, and we can also take a few questions as we're filling in the board in the background. So I'm just checking to see if there are any hands up. Can't see any hands up at the moment, but I can see lots of stuff happening on the board. So please keep doing that. Okay, yeah, we can see fine. Yes, we're having some yes votes for do we think an action plan for the whole of Africa could bring about regional cohesion. We'd also like to know, what do you think should be the priority in the action plan? We don't want it to be huge. We want it to be maybe, 10 commitments. What should that shopping list of 10 things be that we ask the whole of Africa to sign up to? So it would be great to get some more thoughts there.
Something I'm noticing, Carly, often when we're discussing this around what needs the most attention, gender inclusion comes up quite often, and these tend to be the most difficult to value in the very quantitative terms that was mentioned by Fatima is used to value projects. And so I feel like something like PAPAM now, which is very much an advocacy tool or consensus building tool, kind of sidesteps the need to do that quantification, that evaluation of projects in a similar way that other benefits of walking and cycling have to jump through. So I think that I'm really agreeing around the ideas that gender and inclusion can be high up on that list, because that has been so undervalued in the past.
Thanks, Sean. I can see lots of votes for financing involving the private sector, quick win projects, and lots of votes for yes, this could be a good idea for bringing about regional cohesion. And I think, that's really the aim, is to build some sort of regional community for active mobility, to allow cities and countries behind in the journey to learn from cities such as Cairo and Addis and Kigali, who are further ahead. So I think I can't see any questions in the chat. I can't see any hands up. Everyone's filling in the board, which is very helpful. Thank you. So I think we can I can start closing this workshop. Thank you to all the speakers. I think what's really clear for me is there's, Khalil mentioned we met in Nairobi maybe 9 years ago or 10 years ago. I mean, we've been in this game for a long time, promoting active mobility. And sometimes it can get a bit depressing because you see all of the attention going to to electric mobility. And you think about the 60, 70, 80% of people who are walking and could be cycling, and the intention and the investment and the focus is not where it should be, in my opinion. But I think what workshops like today show is that there's a lot of positive action happening at the city level, that there are committed directors, committed heads of transport, ministries of transport, housing and infrastructure, city leaders who are committed and who are doing the right things. But what we need to do is try and really rapidly scale that up, because there's great work happening in Cairo and Addis, but what about other African cities? What about other cities in these countries, secondary cities, peri-urban areas? So there's a lot happening and there's a lot more to be done. And we hope this Pan-African action plan process can really sort of help uplift the active mobility agenda at regional level with the African Union and really bring about, sort of act as a catalyst for change. So I'm just checking the chat. I just want to see what's going on in the chat. Okay, thank you, Geordie. Thanks for joining us. So we will keep the link open to the board for another 10 minutes or so after the session. So feel free to keep popping in your ideas then. But otherwise, I think we are done. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to everyone who's joined and commented on the streaming platform, on the MS Teams platform. It's been a great session, and we'll definitely take all of your recommendations forward as we go ahead with the Pan-African Action Plan process. Thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoy. This is just the start. Please stay on and enjoy the rest of the Transport and Climate Week sessions. There's a really fantastic agenda for the days ahead. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carly, for this very dynamic start this morning, having a very mobile, dynamic discussion on the role of active mobility on the continent.